Pamela.
Hello, Maria. How are you today?
Very well, nearly finishing my working day here in the UK. Good morning to you in California.
Yes, thank you. It is a lovely day out today.
Same here. Welcome to everyone watching us live. Thank you for joining, guys. There is my name on the presentation, but here I'm with Pamela D'Amato, who's our area manager in California. Right, Pamela?
Absolutely. Yes, I am here in Southern California.
Yeah, and I'm the company's head of business development and also lead auditor on several ISO standards. So you guys are covered from a commercial and technical perspective today as well. We'll be talking environmental management, a very interesting, relevant topic. It has been relevant for ages now, but currently is yet to become more relevant. So, Pamela, from your perspective, how important the standard is?
I feel that 14,001 Environmental Safety Management System is very important for many organizations that want to have a clear idea of ramifications of not putting into place the clauses of the standard of ISO 14001. It helps identify the impact on the environment of what your organization is doing. So it allows you to take a look at your carbon footprint and minimize that as much as possible.
In support of what Pamela has just explained, I'll start with a very short history lesson and a diagram just to illustrate the importance of managing our environmental impact. But before, just I would like to let you know that your mics and cameras are disabled. However, we are live on social media, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook as well. So you're very welcome to send us questions, my comments, etc., through the chat boxes on the platforms. So we've prepared two short exercises as well, and we'll open a Q&A session for you if there are any questions raised at the end of the session. So shall we illustrate our point, Pamela?
Go for it, Maria.
Thank you. So here we go with a nice diagram showing that historically the levels of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere wasn't as high as they currently are. Barely 4,000 years ago, when the pharaohs ruled in Egypt, uh, the level was very, very low. 277 parts per million, or ppms to be more exact, and those levels barely changed in the following years. So Buddha attained enlightenment under exactly the same conditions. Uh, the China Tang dynasty ruled under the same circumstances. The first Muslim caliphate arose in the 7th century with nearly the same carbon dioxide levels, and so on. So only in the middle of the 19th century, that changed. The CO2 level began to rise, and all this after having stayed between 275 ppm and 285 ppm for millennia. Then, by the 1910s, it had already reached 300 ppm, and by 2020, it was 412 ppm. So, to summarize it, in a century or so, a crucial aspect of Earth's workings had undergone a change which is 100 times greater than had previously been seen in a millennium. It's
Wow.
scary. Yeah. Why is it so important? Why am I giving this short history lesson? Basically, because uh, this is nicely identified and summed up in a formula that is credited to Yoichi Kaya. And Yoichi Kaya is a Japanese energy economist. And Yoichi Kaya links the size of the economy, the scale of emissions, and the amount of carbon in the energy system, stating then that emissions, as we can see, are the product of population, GDP per head, energy use per unit of GDP, and carbon emissions from that energy. Now, it doesn't require a PhD in mathematics to see that to reduce emissions, one must reduce one or more of those four factors, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct. And private and government actions on the climate have concentrated on which ones? On the last two, carbon emissions per unit of energy, or as we better know it, decarbonization, and energy use per unit of GDP, which is called commonly efficiency. So, why those two? Because of moral and ethic issues. So, the history of 20th century, and again a short lesson of history, shows that reducing population, I'm talking China's experience in population control years ago, uh, those two spoken of as a long-term goal by some Greens and predicted by demographers for much of the world last century is not a course of action that governments can effectively and decently pursue. Another option would be to decrease our economic growth. I doubt that it is acceptable in the eye of the general public and experts. I don't think I'm wrong. Pamela, your take on this one?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. And if you look at all of the organizations, companies, not only here in the United States where I'm at, but around the world that don't really have a clear idea of what their impact is in the environment, unless they have a 14001 ISO certification and in place. I always say you do not know what you don't know. So when you get this type of certification for your organization and company, and see the data of what your company is emitting, you don't know how to correct it.
Yeah, absolutely. And these two short history lessons have been brought to your attention, ladies and gentlemen, for a very simple reason. They quite help me illustrate the purpose of this international standard. ISO 14001 aims to provide organizations with a framework to protect the environment and to respond to changing environmental conditions in balance with socio-economic needs. So, this is the standard that can help organizations contribute to uh, impacting those two factors we need to act upon: decarbonization and efficiency. So, among the objectives, the environmental management system, we can list in the first place the environmental protection, but also financial and operational benefits such as cost reduction or fine avoidance within our legal compliance, control over our operations to improve our environmental management and also optimize all our operations. The system helps us as well to identify what communication is needed to be articulated and how to articulate it in order to cover all our regulatory legal requirements as well as interested parties requirements. Uh, so, Pamela, would you like to add anything to what I've explained so far?
Yes, one of the major things, and you just mentioned that in what you in the last screen, OSHA fines. If your company has ever been fined by OSHA, it could be very costly. These fines could be very expensive for an organization. And by having ISO 14001 certification in place, I have personally heard that you can be fined only a third by being ISO certified than if you were not ISO certified for 14001. So right there, in if you're looking at return on investment on why you should spend the money to get ISO 14001 certification in place, that is a big one, because that right there, it's a small cost in the big scheme of things. The small cost of getting ISO certification in place versus having a very large fine by OSHA.
Yeah, the reason for fines, for reduced fines, not only when it comes to 14,001, but other standards as well, is due to the fact that when operating an environmental management system, organizations demonstrate that they proactively try to protect the environment. This is evidence of their efforts, and this is always taken into account when authorities calculate fines upon organizations. So the fact that we operate efficient systems is enough evidence for our efforts, about our efforts. So this said, here is a quick list some of the benefits, because I like to say that there are as many benefits if I saw compliant systems as organizations in the world. But here is a short list based upon the environmental objectives and, the standard objectives. So, cost reduction, risk management, strategic planning, resource management, supply management, and systematic approach, to name a few benefits. And Pamela and I actually always talk about a very important benefit of implementing an ISO management system, which is the corresponding certification. Because when you implement the system, as Pamela already mentioned, you can invite an independent body to examine, to assess, to evaluate your efforts, and then certify your conformity against the requirements of the standards, thus elevating your organizational reputation. Why? Because ISO standards are worldwide recognized.
Maria, if I could interject as well, a lot of companies actually might not only do 14001 ISO, but might at the same time do 14,001 with 9,001 quality management system. So they do both of them together, or they might do 14,001 with 45,001, which is occupational health and safety management system. And then a company might actually do all three at the same time. And it is easier to accomplish a couple of different ISO certifications at the same time. Sometimes with our company, IMSM, you might be able to have the same assessor if they're ISO certified for those specific codes, which a lot of ours are. So you could do 9,001 and 14,001 at the same time, or all three at once. Again, 45,001, 14,001, and 9,001. And the benefits to doing such as like this 14,001 that we're discussing now, or even 45,001 right now, or 9,001, is if you actually start the process with IMSM, you can actually potentially have your certification in place by the end of this calendar year. And it's a tax write-off. I owned my own business for 19 years. To tell you, I was always looking for a tax write-off against my income as a business. And every penny of these certifications are deductible 100% dollar for dollar against your income for that calendar year. So in essence, the certifications cost you nothing, and you have many huge benefits as we've been discussing, to be able to do a cost justification.
Absolutely, and nothing better than an integrated system. As Pamela says, it's much easier to get it done all together, and gives you further confidence and further opportunities to work better to ensure your stakeholders' trust as well. So how the standard works? So it's an ISO standard, ISO management system standard. So it is based on the so-called Deming cycle. We are too familiar with that. Plan, do, check, act, which is the cycle. We plan for what we need to do. We actually do it. We check what we have done, and in case we identify any deviations, or on the other hand, any opportunities for improvement, we act upon those. How? Planning what we need to do, doing it, checking it, etc. So we represent the cycle nowadays with the concept of leadership in the middle. Why? Because top management, their commitment is essential to the system performance and to your company's success. So, top management is expected to take responsibility for the system, for its effectiveness, for its improvement, for the communication around, for assigning the roles and authorities and responsibilities at all levels, ensuring the integration of the system within the requirements of the organizations and its processes. Uh, it's top management responsibility to support people, to let them understand how important their contribution is to the company's success, to support managers at all levels, etc., etc. Actually, top management is the pillar, the backbone of your uh, system and its success. This said, we have four potential stages to consider aside from top management's involvement and commitment 100% to the system. We separate it in four areas: planning, where we detect assess, advise people around, and take actions upon risks and opportunities. We define environmental objectives. We plan how to achieve those. Then we act upon the support area, which requires actions to ensure resources, competencies, raise awareness, work on our communication, and consider all the documentation that we need to produce or systemize around our system. Then, next stage, that would be operation, where we have planning and control. This is very important, and emergency. We'll need to prepare for any emergency requirements and responses. And then stage 4, evaluation, all about monitoring, what we need to measure, how we measure, etc. Conformity. So we'll need to evaluate our findings, and we need to audit internally and eventually externally our system. This fourth stage, the evaluation stage, is fundamental for our system to work. Why? Because, as we've said, it's all about monitoring, measuring, evaluating, and here comes one more time in top management with their management reviews and aim to continual improvement using corrective actions and dealing with detected non-conformities. Pamela, anything else you might like to add before we went to exercise 1?
Sure. Some other benefits that companies will experience when they have ISO 14001 certification in place, they could actually decrease their workers' compensation insurance premiums by having this safety precaution in place, because not only is this in place for the environment, but it's also for the environment of the employees, to keep the employees safe. So workers' compensation actually does recognize this as such, and so do medical health care carriers. So with your premiums with medical health insurance, when you have this ISO along with even recognized as 14,000,
45.
45,001, yeah, 45,001 with 14,001, either or both together. If you out here in the United States provide like Aetna or Blue Cross, Blue Shield medical health insurance, your premiums can and will be decreased. Now, when you have an organization that has 400 employees and you're dealing with most of them being out in the field, this is substantial, because whether or not you pay your premiums twice a year or once a year or quarterly, you can have thousands of dollars shaved off of each payment that you pay for each of those premiums. That's substantial.
It's much more than you would pay for your ISO implementation in many cases.
Exactly.
So, Pamela, may I ask a favor, please? I am not wearing my spectacles. Can you read the exercise for me?
Yes,
Sorry.
sure.
Thank you.
I have my trifocals on. So the company Tinalive Limited is dedicated to the commercialization of secondhand clothing and items. Due to the specific treatments used, the company has decided to implement an EMS in integration with its QMS. The company plans to implement the EMS in conformity with ISO 14001 in its 3 centers and plans to certify them centrally. That is, certifying its headquarters to cover all 3 locations. Is the company's approach correct?
So there is a company which already operates a quality management system, and now they would like to add to its quality management system an environmental management system. So because they have the experience with the quality management system, which can be implemented and certified from the headquarters, giving support and coverage to all the centers, they would like for the environmental management system to do exactly the same. Is this approach correct? Well, although all ISO management system standards have exactly the same structure, they do present some particularities, and in this case, 14001 has quite a particularity with regards to certifications. Many people would think that this is a correct approach. Unfortunately, when it comes to 14001, we'll need to certify each location separately. This is because even there is a tiny distance between your locations, let's say 100 miles, one may be located in one county and the other one, or others, in other counties. Different environmental rules may apply on a local level. So even within the same city or same town, if each location is ruled by a different council, we might have different local requirements. So every single location needs to be separately assessed and certified. This is a peculiarity of this particular standard. So, yeah,
And if I might add, Maria, as what Maria just said just now, is this is ISO specific for each ISO code. So, for example, ISO 9001 for quality management systems, that is different. So, we could take 1/3 of the locations. If we're dealing, let's say, with 10 locations, we could take 1/3 of them or and rotate every
yeah.
3 years the actual annual certification. So, as Maria mentioned, this is ISO specific for 14001, that for each certificate address, they do have to have an annual certification
Yeah,
regularly every year, each location.
and it's different with the rest of the standards. So, just something to bear in mind. While we have another one, this one has been designed just to address another doubt with regards to, in this case, documentation. Okay, exercise 2, ISO 14001 requires organizations to maintain documented information. We all know that. Which of the following elements must be documented according to the standard? Well, this is a non-exhaustive list of examples, so there are going to be some more. But the idea here is just to let you guys know that actually the standards does require information to be documented, but maybe not as much as you may think. So, scope of the system, environmental policy, risks and opportunities, competencies, environmental objectives. Oh, it has been. I've got it twice. Sorry. Organization size and activity, complexity of the processes and interactions, stakeholders relevant to the system. So please ignore the last one. I have duplicated it. Well, most people do think that they need to explain how complex the organization is and document it. This is not a standard requirement, so no need for it. Many people think that they must document all interested parties and who the interested parties might be. Rule of thumb: all organizations and individuals that may affect our environmental operations and actions, and all organizations and individuals that we may affect with our operation and actions. And again, the standards requires that we know who they are, but doesn't ask us actually to document them in writing. So see, even if we assume that there is quite a lot of documentation, we may not be quite correct considering that it's too much. Now, we've eliminated organizational complexity. We have eliminated stakeholders. It's good to have it, but it's not mandatory. We comply with the standard. Uh, we don't need to document the size or activity of the organizations. We need to document the scope of our system, though. We need to document our environmental policies, risks and opportunities, competencies, because competencies are essential to every single system that we manage, and our environmental objectives. Okay, as I say, uh, these are not the only documents that we must produce, but just a few of those, and an example to illustrate that you might expect more information to be requested, and it it is actually not that much.
Maria, if I could add a couple things, a lot of companies that might be watching this or are listening to everything that we're saying right now, they could be asking, does this apply to my business and to my company? And I would answer this way, that this applies to pretty much anyone in business. You don't have to be handling or dealing with chemicals for this to apply. As we're talking about, it could be. I've worked with construction companies that do commercial and even residential building and construction. They found this to be helpful because they found different ways that they could do things that would be for safety with their employees and the environment. Also, like cleaning companies. I just got off the phone with one just right prior to our call that's looking at this, that does commercial cleaning. And even though they do deal with chemicals, but this was requested by one of their clients actually. So these are the things that when you're thinking, does this apply to my business? We also have companies that have the tractors inside their warehouses and dealing with safety with the environment of exactly how they actually remove and stack their product up on these different levels that go up 40 feet high. So these are the kind of things that you might want to be thinking about, like how could I improve my business, my organization, for the safety of not only the environment of the world, but also our environment as a corporation and as an organization for our employees. How can we do things better?
Great point, Pamela. And I'll add to your list two more sectors. Financial institutions and IT companies are among the organizations that are very interested in 14,001, who would say, but it's actually quite logical. Financial institutions, IT companies run on digitalization, and digital services pollute. So there was a report earlier this year that the, it said that let me remember, 117, I think. Yeah, the equivalent in CO2 emissions, visual, tangible equivalent of CO2 emissions coming from the pictures we daily save on cloud is
Mhm.
117 flights, direct flights, London to Melbourne.
Wow. Huh, goodness.
That was about the inauguration of the latest direct flight to Australia, which lasts for 17 hours. Nice direct flight, by the way. I wouldn't like to be on that one for that long, but actually they compared on Sky News the amount of emissions, and turned out that 117 flights are the equivalent of the daily pollution caused by users saving their pictures, digital pictures on cloud.
Wow.
That's
That's
enormous.
no, that's very interesting. And, unless you are told this or read this, you would have no idea.
Yeah, I agree. So this is you and I keep doing these short talks and workshops just to let people know what's going on and how we can help them. So, guys, thank you for your attention. Thank you for being with us. You can send us questions, comments. Uh, Please send them to marketing@imsm.com or follow us on social media. Pamela, thank you very much. Would you like to add anything else to what we've said?
Absolutely. We welcome anyone that has any bit of interest or queries regarding anything that we've discussed or any ISO code to visit imsm.com and be in contact with us so we could provide you the appropriate materials, documentation, and also proposals for your needs. And again, with this being, we're almost at the midpoint of this year, we would recommend that you get started and get in the IMSM queue very soon so you could have this potentially and hopefully completed by the end of 2022.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pamela. By the way, will you be joining me next week for the 27,001 workshop?
Yes, and it's one of my favorites because cybersecurity attacks are at a monumental high right now, and it's very
Yeah.
necessary.
And we have some news to share with our attendees. I'll let you know later on today, but there's some good news about 27,001. So next week, I'll be talking about it.
Wonderful. Look forward to it. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Pamela.
Have a great
Caroline, can you please take over now? Thank you.